Welcome back to When Bad Things Happen to Good People, a podcast about censorship and the arts. My name is Todd Sullivan. Joining me as always is Peter Amin.
Hello, hello.
And today we are talking about Cocksucker Blues.
The movie, just to clarify. Not that feeling.
Not
Some people get.
not that sense of despair that you get when there's either been too much or too little cocksucking going
That's right.
on. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what
We got to clarify that.
I'm not sure clinically what the definition of Cocksucker Blues
I'm
is.
pretty
whether
sure
it's
that's
the-
in the book. I
whether-
can't even remember what the book is. The ISDM or
Oh right,
whatever,
what is the
book?
ISDN?
I
That's
That's
like
the
the number-
system of books.
That's the system of books. Yeah, the DSM.
The DSM.
Yeah,
Yes.
Diagnostic and
Something manual.
Statistic something manual. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in there under C.
Under C.
If you looked it up, if you have a copy at home,
I would think it would be under blues,
comma
cocksucker.
cocksucker.
Then you
Okay.
break down the different blues types.
Yes, I see. Yeah. It's like list all types of blues here. Cocksucker is just one. Yeah. That makes more sense. Okay, so Cocksucker Blues
Is a movie.
is a movie that was I think kind of seemed purposefully shot, I guess, in a sense, but also very haphazardly shot.
Yeah, so it's a documentary about the Rolling Stones and about their American tour in 1972.
Which was their second American tour.
After 1969, where things ended badly in the Ultimatum Free concert, where a fan was stabbed and beaten to death by the Hells Angels. So, yeah, this was their first time touring in America again after that. I don't know, because that was filmed as well. There was a documentarian
really?
crew for that, and that was filmed. And so when they come back and they're like, okay, let's try this again and like minimize our deaths. But let's bring another documentary crew
film it all
along
again.
to just film it all.
Well, you know what? You got to be running the camera or you're never going to capture stuff, right?
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want to capture everything, which is some of what ended up happening here. To pull from Wikipedia, the film was shot cinema verite with several cameras available for anyone in the entourage to pick up and start shooting. And you did see some of that in the
Yeah,
film where people
yeah.
were able, like some of the band
Yeah,
members
there's
were picking up cameras.
There's a
to
scene, I
start.
think, with Mick Jagger having one of the cameras on stage.
Oh, was there?
I think so.
I remember it felt like it was on either a tour bus or on the tour plane where he was playing with one and looking at the different, how much light was there versus there versus
Yeah.
there. This
And the
lot-
weird microphones, hey?
Yeah,
just
they were
the
very
weird
long. Those were
tube-
long shotgun
Yeah,
microphones.
Yeah.
This allowed the film's audience to witness backstage parties, drug use, including Mick Taylor is shown smoking marijuana with some roadies, and Mick Jagger is seen snorting cocaine backstage. Roadie and groupie antics, and the Stones with their defenses down. One scene include a groupie in a hotel room injecting heroin.
Yeah.
The film
Keeping it classy.
Keeping it classy. The film came under a court order which forbade it from being shown unless the director Robert Frank was physically present. This ruling stemmed from the conflict that arose when the band, having commissioned the film, decided that its content was embarrassing and potentially incriminating and did not want it shown. Frank felt otherwise, hence the ruling. According to Ray Young, the salty title notwithstanding, its nudity, needles, and hedonism was supposedly incriminating and the picture was shelved. This during a liberal climate that saw the likes of Cry Uncle and Chafed Elbows, not familiar with either of those films, playing in neighborhood theaters. Deep Throat was released in the same year. A Rolling Stones concert film, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones, was released instead, and Cocksucker Blues was indefinitely shelved. The court order in question also enjoined Frank against exhibiting Cocksucker Blues more frequently than 4 times per year in an archival setting, with Frank being present. Frank personally introduced one such rare screening of the film on February 23rd, 1988 at Boston's Cinema 57 Theater in Park Square in conjunction with promoting the release of that week of his new film Candy Mountain. Interestingly enough, I read that the film was screened at like an anniversary installation for the Rolling Stones like last year or the year before.
Oh, really?
And it's the first time it's been screened without the director present. And the band themselves were present at the installation for the opening of it the day before.
But not for the screening.
Not for the screening, but like didn't make any sort of demands about the screening not being done. So basically, it was
were they aware of it though?
I think they were.
Oh, okay.
And the article was basically saying that like that's kind of the closest that we've ever come to sort of the band acknowledging it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
I mean, statute of limitations on a lot of that stuff, like
Oh yeah, for sure.
50 years.
Yeah. And that's sort of my biggest complaint about the film is the quality of it. What we saw on, and I would love to know sort of like what the quality of the actual film itself is now, because I wondered like how many copies exist if it's never been officially released.
And what medium too. Like, I mean, what we watched on archive.net is the recording of a VHS playing.
It's a digitized version of a VHS, which I don't know what the original like radio, not fucking what's the word I'm looking for?
Like size, like film size?
Film size. Like it was in TV format, right? It was in 4:3.
Yeah.
But that's all a VHS would record as.
Yeah.
So the film itself could have been a widescreen experience that was just cropped in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, watching it, nothing really stood out that felt like it was missing anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, the quality wasn't great. There were definitely points that felt like there were missing frames.
Yeah, I mean, there was certain points where the speed of playback would slow down or speed up.
Yeah, and there were a lot of times when the audio was out of sync with the video. I think that maybe had to do with damaged frames that had been cut out and respliced.
Yeah.
And whether or not like that's just the given quality of what the film that exists now is, because maybe there's like one physical copy that has been thrown around and screened everywhere that's just gradually degraded over time. I have no idea if there's like a negative somewhere.
It wasn't done digitally, at the time. So whatever master film it's on, I mean, after 50 years, that's going to be, it stretches over time, right? Mm-hmm. It actually kind of grows. So it will slow down the speed. It'll distort the sound. All that kind of stuff will happen to this physical media, right? So whatever that is, if it wasn't kind of digitized at some point earlier on, it's not going to be in great shape 50 years on if it's like physical, tape or film.
For sure.
Yeah.
So basically it is, on the one hand, it's very much sort of what you would expect from a tour film. Yeah. It's got your, concert performances. It's got more sort of candid behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
It's got some footage of like fans being excited about the show.
Yeah. Like the out front of the stadium before the show shot. Right.
And they were talking to the guy who was like scalping tickets for like, what was it, like $12,000 or something? And
he got them for $3 or something.
And he's trying to they're trying to ask him, and he's like, yeah, they're selling for like, I don't know, $8. And he's like, come on, tell them the truth. And I was like, I can't really tell the truth to the media, guys. Like,
can't tell the truth on this show.
And then some of the candid stuff is a little bit debauched.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I think before we started recording, maybe not as much as we were expecting going in.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the the hype around this film being kind of shelved and too incriminating, the band not wanting it to come out, and that it was embarrassing and all that. There wasn't a lot of stuff that was really over the top. I mean, there was a few things. Right. There's a few things, but realistically, I mean, you could probably cut 5 minutes out of this and get rid of most of the stuff that would have been really over the top. I mean, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff is pretty ho-hum, especially in this day and age, right? For, our expectations of what happens backstage or, on the tour bus or on the plane and that kind of thing. So I mean, there's certainly stuff in there where you go, okay, that's pretty egregious. Or
I think, I suspect that what happened is that the Stones probably went to the filmmaker and said like, can you remove this stuff? And he was just like, no. And that his intention was to really sort of capture the reality of what it was. And the Stones were probably hoping for a more polished, professional looking thing. And that was their feud. And to that, I mean, I really enjoyed it.
I liked it. Yeah.
I liked it a lot.
I really found myself enjoying the performance pieces within,
music
within the movie. I mean, you got some really interesting concert footage. Obviously there's, some songs that are, I think pretty familiar to a lot of people, but some stuff that, not that I'm a huge, know all the Stones catalog or anything like that, but there was some kind of interesting, tunes and things that maybe you don't hear all that often or that are, kind of not played, this day and age. So
I'm not a huge Stones fan. I don't think I've ever, like, this is probably literally the only time I've ever gone out of my way to consume any Rolling Stones. I did really enjoy the song that they did with Stevie Wonder. That was so good.
That was really good.
I don't know what the Stevie Wonder song was that started it, and then it morphed into Satisfaction, right?
I think so. Yeah, it was something like heaven, something about heaven, and then into
but it was really good. The rest of the music performances, I could take or leave.
I thought it was really neat, kind of capturing that, especially.
Yeah, no, I agree, it was neat, but like
for me, and obviously if you're not that into the Stones, but like I've known the Stones as an older band. Right. And certainly this day and age, when you see the Stones or anything in kind of the last 20 years, it's a bunch of old dudes, really old dudes on stage. So this was interesting to see these leathery guys. Yeah, like they're young guys. That's true. In their prime. Yeah, like,
it took me a while to recognize
who was who. Hey,
well, Mick Jagger you recognize kind of immediately,
but Keith Richards
like, was the one. He was hot.
Yeah, he was not a haggard dude.
No,
back then.
I mean that missing tooth was maybe you could have taken care of that,
but I don't know. I thought it was really kind of neat to see them in their prime. And,
that's true.
And like the music was good.
Yeah.
Like the songs are good. They hold up. They're pretty rocking. Like, it was a good concert film in that sense. You don't ever really get a whole song though, but close to sometimes. But yeah, I thought that was, really kind of neat to see and really well done, right? We got footage from a bunch of different shows and different camera angles. Sometimes it's more of a classic kind of view of the stage. Sometimes the camera's right up in there, on them as they jam. And it was some cool concert footage that probably, at the time would have been pretty avant-garde, but nowadays, people have done that in all sorts of concert films. But
well, there is still some pretty avant-garde stuff. Like there was some, and again, not so much the concert footage, but like the behind-the-scenes stuff. I seem to recall that there was one sequence that had two entirely different sets of audio overlapped on each other. So you were hearing audio from one scene that you were mostly watching, but then also hearing audio from another scene. And then at one point it cut to the other scene while both audio was still playing. But then you realized, oh, now we're getting audio. Now we're seeing this part. And then it cut back over there. And that was a little weird.
Okay. I'm not sure that one stuck in my memory.
A lot of the audio I didn't really hear. I didn't really know what was being discussed.
It was tough to get a sense. So again, like, older quality recording.
Absolutely.
And then just as well, that translation from a VHS tape to being digitized and like the background noise and all of that. It made it tough to actually understand. Like you could hear people were speaking, but it was tough. You got British accents along with weird American reporters, tough to make heads and tails sometimes of what they were trying to discuss.
And also just the nature of the way it was filmed is you didn't always have, and I think that's part of why they had those shotgun mics. Is they're intended to pull audio from a long way away. Because they're not always like right up close. They're not mic'd up properly because people are just picking up a camera and going whenever. And so sometimes they're just not close enough to it. So it ended up being kind of intimate in the sense that you felt very much like you were in the room.
Very fly on the wall feeling in some of the scenes.
Not in the sense that you were right there hearing everything that's happening because you can't hear a lot of it. But intimate in the sense that you feel like you're in the room and just like if you were in the room sitting there, you wouldn't quite be able to hear what they're talking about over there.
What are they talking about over there in that corner? Yeah.
Let's start talking about specifics from the film.
Yeah, so you've written down there's an opening disclosure right when this movie starts.
It opens with the text, except for the musical numbers, the events depicted in this are fictitious. No representation of actual persons and events is intended. And then that kind of matches with the closing credits where every single person is given an on-screen persona.
Name,
And I'm pretty sure that the intent there was just... That was a caveat that the Rolling Stones placed when the court ruled that this guy was allowed to screen it. And they were like, okay, but you have to pretend that this is all just a performance.
Fiction,
We're all just playing a part of what we think the Rolling Stones might be like or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is insane. That's not what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like giving them cameras and letting us see what's really happening.
This is all actually going on.
Yeah, you heard it here first. This is actually real footage.
This is real footage,
This
guys.
is not performative.
This is real, I think. I almost wasn't going to take any physical notes, and then one scene happened that I was like, I have to write this down to make sure I do not forget to talk about it.
Okay.
And then I did start taking notes after that. My favorite scene in the entire film is when Mick Jagger can't figure out how to hang up the phone.
Oh, yeah.
The hotel room.
After the room service one?
I think it's after,
or when
he's
he's
just
doing this little business deal.
I think it's after it might be after room service. All I know is it's footage of him. He's on the phone in his robe, and he's just finishing up with somebody, and he's like, okay. And then he starts putting the phone down, and then he brings it back up. And then he puts it, and he brings it back up. He puts it, and then he's like, I'm trying to figure out how to disconnect. And he puts it down, and then you can hear him just drop the phone on the table. He doesn't even hang it up. He just drops it. It's like, this guy is so fucked up.
Yeah.
He has forgotten how the telephone works.
Well, to be fair, I mean, in the 70s.
I know.
It was a different time, I guess.
But like, to me, that is the stuff in this film that I was enjoying. Like,
the good stuff.
This is not. It's not a glamorous depiction of what this is like, unless you're like, I want to be so fucked that I forget how to use everyday tools.
Well,
I mean, I guess there is a benefit to that. But then, like, just stay in bed and don't let anyone make a documentary about you.
Well, don't go perform 4 hours later.
Well, I guess. I mean, they must be used to shake. Some of them look pretty like out of it on stage too.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, there's a few spots in the film too. There's one like voiceover narration piece about how counterculture and how kind of like fringe element the Rolling Stones were at this time.
Yeah.
Right. There was a thing, it was essentially from a news clip or something like that, voiced over the film about, parents are worried about, the album covers they're seeing their kids bring home and, all this kind of stuff. And the Stones, as we know them now, right, this old man band, but back then they were this counterculture Brit pop movement. They were this revolutionary,
kind of like a darker alternative to the Beatles.
Yeah, very much so. Very much like the counterculture aspect of the British invasion at the time, right? So it was interesting to see. I mean, we've all seen clips of like the screaming Beatles fans and that kind of stuff, but to see kind of like the flip side of this for the Rolling Stones, where, they're like, have my baby, and, like just a much more aggressive type of fan versus just like the fainting and fawning, Beatles fans from the time.
And from there, I do kind of, I want to talk about the scene that's on the tour plane with the groupies.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I think this is the only time where we actually see any sexual acts is on the plane.
Depending on how you define sexual act, maybe.
Well, we see two people going at it on the plane.
Yeah. And then beyond that, just sort of, what seems like fun shenanigans of like lifting up girls' tops and picking them up. And just watching that, it did feel very much like some of this is sexual assault.
Yeah, it felt a little rapey, like especially with the girls like kind of being no, and then still taking their tops off and their pants.
They're smiling and they're laughing, but they're trying to push their tops down.
Yeah,
but it's like you're trapped on a plane with a rock band, and there's implied power here. And so,
I mean, it was again a different time, but it felt a little like a little rapey vibe there, especially when the guy picks up the naked girl and she's just like screaming and wants really no part of it. And then they're also on film, like they know there's a camera present too. So, that kind of, I think, would make you put up less of a fight potentially. But I mean, that was a little.
The part that was odd to me about that too is that in my memory, most of the people that were doing those things were like adjacent to the Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
the Stones were like grooving out on some weird percussion instruments while all this is going on.
Yeah, they're off doing something else. Or Mick Jagger's playing with cameras, or trying to hang up a phone, right? Like, it's usually like crew or roadies or other folks, right?
Yeah,
that are,
and maybe that's part of the disappointment is the groupies are sitting there being like, I wanted Mick Jagger.
That's right. Yeah, that's why they're saying no. That's why they're saying
fucking
no.
Dugan or whoever this guy is.
Why is the senior roadie picking me up? Yeah.
The other sexual act that I would be referring to is this. One of my second favorite scene is the way this cut goes. It's from like a reel change because you can see the cigarette burns from the old days, and then there's a couple of seconds of black. And then it comes to this naked woman with a just fucking ridiculous amount of cum on her.
Yeah,
just an insane, just a river of jizz between her tits, and she's just playing with it and rubbing it around and seemingly having a good time. That doesn't feel like there was, that didn't feel rapey.
No. I mean, that was, definitely consensual. The dude was still there.
The dude was still there chatting with her,
and the other time she's talking to the camera.
Yeah.
And that seemed fine.
So that strikes me as sexual content.
Yeah, sexual content, but we don't see a sexual act.
We don't see a sexual act
during that. But,
well, I mean,
they talk about it, but we don't see anything.
Yeah.
And I think is it on the airplane where we talked about you really only see one cock during this whole movie.
I think it's on the airplane.
And I think it's on the airplane as well. Yeah.
I don't know who it belonged to. I don't think the face of the person was
it was quite
frame.
a quick flash, and it wasn't being sucked. So
it was a fine cock. It was,
we've kind of jumped around to a bunch of different scenes here, but let's go back to the start because there is kind of an explanation given about how this movie came to be, about
at least the title.
Yeah, right. Like how you wanted to make kind of a pornographic type of party film that was kind of, a nouveau style.
Yeah, I think they started with. I read a little bit about this too, where it started with the song. There is apparently a song called Cocksucker Blues that they wrote, and it was intended to be kind of a fuck you to their first label, because they had to deliver one more song before their contract was done. And so, as artists often do, they put together a piece of shit to like just piss off their company, be like, fine, I'm done. So they gave them the song that had lyrics they would never be, and it's apparently performed at the beginning there too. And then I guess from there they were talking about maybe making a party album of like the dirtiest songs that they could come up with, because
there was some other artist I think that had done something like that, or at least had written some songs. Like, what was the name of the song? How much pussy can you eat?
How much pussy can you eat? Yeah.
Right.
And then there was a discussion from there as well about like making a pornographic film to go along with it. And that was an interesting discussion. And it again sort of lands in that kind of the era-ness. Because I remember there was a period of time, probably in the late 60s, early 70s, where I had read that like Stanley Kubrick had considered making an actual pornographic film with Hollywood actors and with a proper story, because that was just sort of the era where you maybe could have done that, because you had films like Deep Throat that were sort of, they were
bridging to mainstream at the time,
at traditional theaters. Now, I don't think this was actually their attempt to make that film.
No, but it was an interesting preface to throw in at the start to kind of make you think, okay, we see what maybe they were kind of attempting, but just kind of an interesting, that's one of the first things that we hear in the film that's not a musical performance, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Do you have anything else from the start you want to talk about, or?
Well, this was so after that introduction, which I think it's like the director or one of the producers that is speaking there.
I think it's the producer.
Yeah, Marshall something.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Marshall, I believe, is the producer.
Is the producer. So after that, we go into kind of like an interview. We're in a hotel room or a house or something like that, and there's a reporter there who's trying to interview the band, and it's a bit chaotic, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, but they're talking about a little bit about the tour and being in America again, and things happened last time and that kind of stuff. And for me, it was tough to hear kind of what they were talking about during this interview, but it seems like, because there's not a ton of like exposition in this film, it seems like that was an attempt to kind of, again, create the story, a bit of a narrative for this concert piece, because it did turn into more of a, we get the behind the scenes, in the dressing room or wherever, and then a performance piece, and then now we're at a hotel and then a performance piece, right? That seemed to be kind of the structure of the film, and ostensibly that we're following the tour, and each piece is kind of we're in a different city or a different place or what have you, and we're just kind of seeing what happens behind the scenes and then on stage, kind of little clips of these kind of things. And for me, I wish I had been better able to understand some of that, initial kind of setup and what they were talking about with the reporter and what Mick Jagger was, he had answered a few questions, and it was tough to kind of hear and get a sense of, what exactly they were talking about in that scene. So yeah, that I think is a scene that sets the stage for the film, but it's tough quality wise to kind of understand what was happening there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so the airplane ride, that was a bit of a crazy one. And then we get a bunch of different kind of scenes of, again, as I said, we kind of get either in a hotel or driving around, or either kind of like a before or after the show kind of, or on the way to the show, or in a hotel. We get this kind of almost haphazard filming of what happened that day, or here's a few clips from this backstage period before the show where they're getting ready, or we see Mick Jagger changes into an outfit in one scene and getting ready, and sometimes you can hear like the other band or the opening band in the background as they're in their dressing room getting ready. And then we see, pieces of the show, and, we see some interesting characters.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it at the time, but kind of like reading into it a little bit after. That was Tina Turner in one of the earlier scenes that was in the locker room.
Tina
or no,
Turner.
where did I see it? It's in the credits at the end. It
I saw the name, but I didn't
Tina
see
Turner
her in it. I did spot Dick Cavett, Andy Warhol, and Truman Capote.
Oh yeah.
At one, I think it was before they went on. They were hanging out backstage and talking to them. But I missed Tina Turner. I didn't see her.
Yeah.
But I did see her in the credits. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Terry Southern as well, who I don't think I would have been able to recognize his face, but he co-wrote. He was a writer in the 60s, and he co-wrote, I believe, the script to Dr. Strangelove with Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was actually one of the ones I think that was talking to Kubrick about making the pornographic film with him.
Yeah, I would not be able to pick.
I don't know what he looks like, but I recognize the name.
Yeah. So let's focus in on, I guess, some of the key things that from an incrimination, or the reason why they might want to self-censor. So we've already kind of talked about it. The airplane scene, right? We see nudity, we see people fucking on the plane, we see the little bit of the we don't know who it is, but someone from the crew kind of being a pretty aggressive with the girls, and then we have the scene of the post-coitus girl just playing with cum and just hanging out like she's having the best day of her life. And then,
then there was that one girl who was like, she was trying to get a ticket, and she's talking about how they came and took her kid because she's a mother on LSD. And she's like, come on. I mean, I gave birth to her on LSD.
Yeah, she was born on LSD.
Anyway, if I can't get a ticket, I might just die.
No, she says, I'll kill myself if I don't get a ticket.
Yeah, because I got nothing to live for anyway. I'll just go jump off a bridge or something.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell happened to this girl?
Wow.
She's having a rough day.
Yeah, yeah. Like, get her a ticket. This is a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that one was kind of shocking because it was kind of out of nowhere, right? Like it just, a lot of these scenes just pop up.
Mm-hmm.
The other scene, we see a girl inject herself with heroin. I mean, we don't really know what's in there, but ostensibly heroin, because later on in the movie, there's a little rant about Heroin Nation or whatever.
Yeah. And when I saw that too, because I got a note kind of about that, but to kind of a wider extent, that comes about halfway through the film. And prior to that, I think there's a couple of scenes either of explicit cocaine use or implied cocaine use. Yeah. Because there's definitely a scene where I saw Jagger was like rolling up a dollar bill.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's the lady that they get. There's some lady in the backstage, and like it's her first time or something, right? So she does it, and then they have a little interview with her after, and she's like, I didn't know it's going to be so good.
Oh yeah.
And she's just like, okay.
But when the heroin comes up, I have a very different reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether or not that's entirely just kind of where we are now in history, or if that would have been like in my mind, cocaine is bad, but it's not like heroin bad.
Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely, at least nowadays, different classes for sure. And that was the early 70s, but certainly into the 80s, cocaine became this kind of not acceptable per se, but it was more of this party drug that was out
It was
there,
acceptable within like the circles that were
Yeah.
using it, while the mass media was pushing the whole, dare and
right? Yeah, exactly.
winners don't do drugs, and
But
all that
also
stuff.
very different in terms of reactions, right? So, cocaine from a rock and roll standpoint, I mean, it's a party drug. It keeps you going.
Yeah.
You're out there, you're amped up. Whereas heroin is not very exciting to watch someone be
that's
on,
true.
right? It's not, you're not going to go have the performance of your life or, that kind of thing, right? So we also do see, there's another scene, I think, where we see, I don't know if it's a crew member or something, but we do see another gentleman
Injecting heroin?
with the needle
Injecting
kind of
something.
already in his arm and just kind of like,
I think if that's the
playing
one you're
around with
talking
it.
about, this is another one of my favorite scenes because it features this guy.
This is the heroin rant, I think. Right?
No, well, it's not heroin. It's quinine and lactose.
Oh,
He's going on this endless rant about like quinine and lactose, but you can go down the street and like, anybody can get a dime bag, but
of
like
heroin. Yeah.
but like quinine and lactose, he's convinced it's going to be the next big thing. And I was so obsessed with this guy who he looks like he's coked out.
yeah. Oh,
And I'm just watching him as he's going on this rant about quinine and lactose.
but he starts the rant with something about like the heroin nation or
It might be.
something like
I
that,
was-
and how they're no good or
It's
something.
not
right?
until he got to the quinine and lactose that I perked up and was like, what the fuck is this guy going on about? And then I'm like 2 minutes into his rant, when I look to the other side of the screen, I'm like, that dude is fucking shooting heroin right now.
Yeah.
This is wild. There's a man going on a rant I do not understand.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the screen, there's a man just fucking shooting heroin. And this is one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen. That felt like something that could have been in a David Lynch film.
Yeah. The other thing too
It
is
was so
like,
incomprehensible.
The guy who's on this rant, he like, I don't believe we've seen him before in the film either, right? He just kind of shows up. He's in this one scene and has this rant. And,
Yes,
and
exactly.
we don't see him again.
Yeah. I briefly thought, is this guy the director maybe? I don't know. Yeah. That was a crazy scene.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have rampant drug use, both cocaine and heroin. But yeah, a lot of the stuff is pretty tame too. I mean, they're just kind of sitting around, waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
They're at a hotel or they're backstage and they're just kind of hanging out.
There's a prolonged sequence kind of backstage where it's kind of like, it feels like kind of like the end of the party where most people have gone home. There's a few people left who are kind of chatting, and Keith Richards is in a bad state.
Yeah.
He's just like passed out on some groupie's lap.
Yeah. She's like stroking him and taking care of him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
she was very like, even earlier when like, I think it was maybe before they played and he was just sort of sitting there looking very much like the sad, bitter artist hunched over, and she's like kind of, gently rubbing his back. And it's like, yeah, that's what all of the sad, tortured artists are really looking for, is just someone to like, pat them on the back and say, it's okay.
It's all going to be fine.
You're a special little boy.
Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of, and especially because it looked like it was definitely like a hockey or a basketball change room or something, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like a bench in the middle of a bunch of lockers. Like,
so it's probably at whatever,
some
venue
arena
they were playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like watching him just sort of gradually sort of,
yeah.
So presumably he's taking some amount of heroin at that point as well, because he just kind of
something
drifts into some
not
sort of-
cocaine.
Probably not good
Probably
cocaine.
not-
That's for sure.
Not
No.
good cocaine. Yeah. Some off-brand cocaine that does not do much for you.
Cocaine with a K.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ketamine. There was one other interesting scene that I had a note around, which is they can't get the TV to work in a hotel.
Oh yeah.
And they're just kind of fiddling around with it. And then
they throw it
the
out the
next thing
window.
you see, they're all on the balcony and they're like, okay, make sure there's nobody down there. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, you tell me when to let it go. And yeah, the classic, like, which I think has been in a bunch of movies or kind of, reproduced in kind of rock and roll culture is, throwing stuff off the balcony. Right. And, we're thinking here, 1972, this might be one of the first like recorded actual bands throwing a TV off of a balcony.
Also, in my mind, when you picture like a rock star throwing a TV out of a hotel window, it's like he's in some
fit or
he's
something.
in a fit. He's so
this is
fucked up.
pretty organized.
He's like angrily picking it up and exactly like these guys are like they're picking it
Well,
up.
like
together
I said, they couldn't get it to work. So then they're like, well, what do we do? I guess we throw it off the balcony.
They take the time to unplug it first, and then two people carry it over.
They have a plan. They're like,
they have
okay,
a guy down there who's like, just make sure it's near the garbage area.
Yeah.
To make sure that it's completely safe and it's going to be the least disruptive to hotel staff.
It's like, it's ostensibly like a pretty, what should be kind of a wild moment, and it just seems so too overly orchestrated, right? To be really rock and roll.
There's also this moment at the end of it where, and I think it's Keith Richards who is there doing it, just starts laughing after they've thrown it. And there is that moment of like, being this kind of young person who's maybe, still getting used to
fame and
the
fortune,
fame and the fortune, and this realization of, we can just afford to do this. What are they going to do? They can't kick us out. We're the fucking Rolling Stones. Just add it to the bill.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was, Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of all the stuff that I had. There's a shot of them like playing poker, there's, got a like classic behind the, in the dressing room playing poker.
There was a shot, I think, I'm not sure, but it looked like it was a shot of like crew members kind of picking up the hotel afterwards, folding shirts and it's all been sort of semi-trashed by the night before, and they're just sort of getting, here's Mick's shirt, better fold it up and put it in the briefcase or suitcase or whatever. And then there was another, speaking of non-consensual sexual activity, there was one of like, it wasn't sexual activity, but there were like three people in a hotel room. There was one woman and then there was two men, and they were all naked. And so presumably some amount of sort of like sexual activity had gone in there, but they were just kind of hanging out and smoking a joint. And I think one of the members of the Stones
was there,
comes in at that point and is just sort of comes and takes a couple of,
and that's where they're like, oh, check the mic.
Yes,
see
that's
if
right.
the mic's working, if we're picking everything. He comes in, grabs a joint, and
they talked a little bit about like whether or not it was legal to have rolling papers. Because they were saying
they were in Indiana, and then the guy's like, well, what if you have like tobacco or whatever?
Well, then it's legal.
Then you're good.
Then
like,
you're good.
But that papers on their own.
Apparently the issue is that they were looking to like roll a joint and nobody had any papers. Somebody was like, I got the grass if you've got the papers.
And they're like, well, we just use cigarettes. We empty the tobacco out.
That's right.
And fill it with our own grass. So I mean, I think it does a good job of capturing kind of rock and roll, both ups and downs, right? Like there's some wild stuff, or definitely implied wild stuff in this movie, both, sex and drugs and that kind of stuff. The music is great. Like you're getting some real like early raw, like really rock and Rolling Stones music. The song with Stevie Wonder is amazing.
So good.
So good. And like you get a real good glimpse, I think, into both the highs and lows of what it would have been like to be, a famous rock band touring the States during that time.
And given all that, like I said before, I absolutely loved it. I didn't love every single moment. No. There's times where I was like, this could,
some of it is just there's a camera rolling and there's not much happening.
I could have done with at least one fewer sequences of them walking to the stage. I don't know. It feels like that is such an overused trope, and maybe it wasn't in 1972.
Probably wasn't.
But like, oh my God, can we please just like, there's nothing happening. You're just fucking walking. We don't need this.
Or like we're driving to a show and there's not really much conversation.
You know what? I didn't mind the driving. The driving, you don't often get a chance to see like Mick Jagger in like a fucking Beetle or whatever it was, just barreling down the road in the middle of nowhere and going in and playing pool with some random people. That I kind of enjoyed that. That part was cool.
And there's also a scene, I think it's Keith Richards. He ends up signing a bunch of autographs like at a hotel.
Oh yeah, the hotel lobby. Like, it looks like they're checking out.
And
they're asking some woman whether or not they knew who these people are. Like the crazy long-haired hippies.
So lots of kind of neat, interesting things in the movie.
And, that's interesting too, actually. Speaking of, when you were talking about how, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like how it's interesting to see the Stones as this much younger band when you think of them as this old band. And the fact that it is a point in their career where maybe they're not as huge as they would become. And so you can have those moments where they wander into a random pub and play pool or interact with some people in the hotel lobby who maybe don't really care about them. And it's not all just sort of screaming lunacy everywhere.
for sure. I mean, they're only their second tour in America, and 72. So I mean, they've been around for a while, but yeah, still, I mean, you're gonna have a good chunk of the population that doesn't know or have an idea who they are, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and to see that, especially the juxtaposition of like some of the girls behind the counter are just smiling and like, oh my god, this is happening, and then there's some staff that are like, okay,
there's
like,
one guy who's like, get these guys out of here.
Yeah, he's
I want to hit on my
just
coworkers.
nonplussed at all, right? Couldn't care less. So yeah, you get some interesting kind of stuff like that, and yeah, it's certainly very candid, and kudos to the band for kind of picking up and the cameras and for turning them on and filming and letting them play and not getting too fussed about it.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, you got to give them anti-kudos for being like, we don't want you to release this movie.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so they break even on kudos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, some of it is kind of incriminating.
Some of it is kind of incriminating,
and like they're. In fairness, there could be some legal issues. Not now. I mean, we're past a lot of it, but just with the care and concern and things happening on their watch or while they're present.
Pete,
I'm just saying, like, probably would have been fine.
Consent is important. I know.
Probably would have been fine, but on the off chance that someone takes issue and then they're just in lawsuits for years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see, if the statute of limitations are all taken care of and everything else.
I mean, we're plus 50 years.
It would be great to see an actual official, proper, as high quality as possible release of this film.
And especially cleaning up the sound. I mean, both from like the audio where, you're kind of barely hearing what they're saying, or,
quite often you can actually hear the clicking or whatever of the film camera.
Yeah, exactly. So cleaning up the audio. I mean, the performances were better, right? Obviously, I think different cameras were being used to capture a lot of the...
I don't think that cameras would have been capturing the audio. There's going to be some kind of recorder that's plugged directly into the mixing board for the show. So that would explain that.
Yeah. So much better for the actual like performance pieces. But yeah, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff is...
not great.
Like the audio quality, the ability to distinguish kind of words and what people are saying is
even stuff that would have been properly captured is degraded just because of the quality of the VHS and then the scanning and then whatever else. It's probably very low bit rates for the video and everything else.
So it would be pretty neat to see it kind of in a more glorious presentation because I mean it's a real. It reminds me a lot of, some of the kind of concert films, whether it's, like This Is Spinal Tap or something like that, that pokes fun at a lot of this stuff, or like an Almost Famous kind of thing where it's, a lot of this stuff, you're kind of like, okay, you kind of have seen this in concert movies before to, taken to one extent or another kind of thing. Right. So I'm curious how much of this was either talked about or known or shown to other people at the time, and then down the road in the years made it into other movies.
It's definitely a film that has a history of infamy, and has been, I assume, somewhat regularly screened over the years by the director.
No more than 4 times, but
no more than 5 times
per year
is what it was. Yeah, per year. But still, I mean, over the years. And, presumably you can, it's still one screening, even if it is in a huge theater.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ever, done it in any huge theaters. So the point being, like, it does have a reputation and people do know about it. People have talked about it for years. And it has been circulating underground for years. I think initially it would have been on a pirated VHS that people passed around. Yeah, that's about all I have to talk about in regards to the film as well.
I mean, I think in this day and age, aside from some of the like really over the top drug use, which... I guess the fact that it's real and on film may be somewhat problematic, but like this is something that should be out there. Like it's a neat capturing of a time and a moment and a certain way of life that you don't see this candidly anywhere else, really.
And I am kind of one of those people who is inclined to think that like people are going to use drugs. You can't stop that. Let's make it as safe for them as possible.
Yeah.
So as much as I fucking hate needles, and I absolutely put my hand between myself and the screen when she was injecting. Whatever. Let people do what they want to do. I don't have a problem with it being in the documentary.
Yeah. Well, I just think like legally, if you wanted to actually release this nowadays, that could. I don't know. That could potentially. I
don't know if there's any legal law against like showing drug use.
I'm pretty sure if it's real, if it's not simulated, there's some issues, at least in Canada.
Would you be considered an accomplice to something at that point?
I'm
as
not
the
sure. But
filmmaker,
again, statute of limitations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing that
this is not a legal
This is not
podcast,
a
so
legal
we're not going to really.
But yeah, and again, laws are going to vary from country to country. But I think the only statute of limitation that may not run out is murder, and unless someone died of a drug overdose directly related to this film,
I think you're okay.
I think you're okay. And even then, unless you were the person that was actually doing the injection, it wouldn't be a murder charge anyway. It would be
manslaughter.
Well, it wouldn't even be that. It would be like
homicide.
Well, except you didn't have hands on it. You'd just be an accessary to whatever the crime was, I think. But again, this isn't a legal podcast. So.
Tune in next week for our legal.
It would be fun to do as a podcast where we discussed laws with no expertise.
That's right.
For just two guys.
Just like, I think the law is this.
I think the law should be this.
I have no idea. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a really smart guy.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So what's your final rating?
This is a tricky one because I think, based on what we've talked about, I watched a much tougher version or
that's true.
A less, a less shined up version of this film. Like the quality was quite bad in terms of the version that I watched. So, musically and like the candid nature of it and some of like just the stuff that was captured, I think that was great. But at the same time, I mean, colors, sound, a lot of this stuff was pretty tough. Like I said, that first scene with the kind of interview that is a little bit more kind of exposition style or sets up the movie, could hardly make out what they were talking about. Yep. So, that was kind of tough. But I think I've always been a fan of kind of concert movies with behind the scenes kind of stuff and that kind of thing. So I think I'm probably still going to go, probably probably a 4 cocks on a plane out of 5. I mean, I think still like the film itself is, again, concert films at the time, not as candid, not as like, behind the scenes as to what's really going on. And so to get some of that look at things like that, I think is really interesting. Both the fact that some of it's really boring, right? You're sitting around waiting to go on stage.
Exactly.
Like nothing much is going on. You're just chilling, hanging out. Like nobody's raping anybody or shooting heroin sometimes. Yeah. So, to see kind of the ups and downs of that, I think is cool. Having played in a band myself, I can tell you, I never got, anything like that for drugs or groupies or so like, there's certainly a level of fame and popularity and that kind of thing where some of this stuff just is now available or is part of the process. A lot of like smaller bands and bands that are struggling.
You needed to pick your bands better.
Yeah, they're not, it's not all like this. Rock and roll doesn't start like this. Rock and roll maybe ends like this, but this is not, a band just setting out in a van going around their home state or home province, right? Certainly a different feel to that. But it can definitely,
once you have your logo on a plane, things are different.
That's right. Yeah. So I can certainly appreciate how some of this kind of stuff would have come to fruition, but just the waiting around and some of that stuff, I think it certainly adds to the zany and wacky stuff and how that stands out when you have some of that like downtime and these guys are just hanging out or they're passed out or what have you, right? So I enjoyed it in that kind of completeness sense where you're getting the whole picture.
And I really liked it too. Probably maybe my favorite concert movie at this point, but I also haven't watched a lot of concert movies. Maybe this is the only concert movie I've ever seen.
I mean, I've seen a bunch, but again, most concert films don't have as much behind the scenes, right? Like you're getting a lot more of the performance. Cause I mean, that's, if I went and bought a ticket and went to the show, that's what I would be seeing. So a lot of concert films, you don't get as much behind the scenes, right? Unless specifically it's a documentary style and, that's what the focus of the film is on that process.
And I guess there's a difference between a concert film, which is maybe about a specific concert, and like a tour film which is more capturing a tour like this one was. But I would go with 4 tiny little cocaine spoonfuls out of 5 for my review, my rating. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's worth a watch.
It's worth a watch.
Definitely download the version that Todd watched.
Yeah,
not the one that I watched. If there's like a German voiced over interview with Mick Jagger at the start, go find a different version.
Okay, so next week. What are we doing next time? We are doing another movie.
Yes.
And it's, I think, The Devil.
Well, The Devils, I think, right? We had kind of a few, but I think we settled on The Devils.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is one I've been talking about doing for a while. It's been on my list of films to watch for a very long time. So
and it's been on my list for a while, too.
Has it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Ever since I found out about it.
There you go.
2 weeks ago. No,
time is relative. Maybe 2 weeks is a long time.
No, it's been longer than that. But ever since I found out about it, right before this podcast.
And then after that, I believe, is our 75th episode, where I think we're going to try to do something different.
A little different, yeah.
It's probably going to be live.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
It's a video game.
Yeah.
It is Postal 2.
Yeah.
And we will likely be streaming it on Twitch.
That's the plan, yeah.
And then we'll...
Do you have it? I don't have Twitch.
So. I have Twitch. I have a Twitch account.
Right on.
I have the Postal 2 game. I can put it all on this laptop right here. We can do it from this room. And yeah. And the plan will be to stream it live on Twitch so you can actually watch the gameplay. The gameplay that we record, I'll throw up on YouTube afterwards so that we can permalink to it if you want to watch it.
Right on.
And then we'll pull the audio from that live stream and post the audio as the podcast episode.
Excellent.
And that is how we're going to plan to do that. And then what we're doing after 75, we'll tell you later.
Yeah.
Because we're not quite sure yet.
We have some ideas, but yeah, I think in general, we're going to try and tackle some material that's not quite as intense as some of the books that we've just gone through. That being said, I mean, not that we won't tackle stuff like that, but having 2 or 3 of those in a row
we're going to take a little
tough,
break. That's also why we're purging our mind with some movies.
Good old-fashioned movies and video games.
A nice, insane video game. And then, maybe a casual brain-friendly novel.
That's right.
As always, you can find all of our important stuff over at blahblahblahmedia.com, BLAHBLAHBLAH media.com. Links to merch, links to Patreon, links to buy us a coffee, which is also buying us a beer technically.
Yeah, we won't use that money for coffee.
No. It's also got links to all of the podcasts that we've done here, all of the podcasts I've done with Carlo over at Half Cut Conspiracies, and maybe soon it'll start having some stuff involving the live streams I do on location in Kamloops.
Right on. Not to mention our legal podcast that we're going to launch.
Our legal podcast, yes. I am thinking about a new podcast right now, but I'm not going to reveal it yet. But
Okay.
Then, I think that's everything, right?
Yeah.
Did I forget to say anything?
Well, just to hit us up. So if you know of something that has been banned or censored in some way that we haven't covered, whether it's a book or some other type of media, let us know, because we, as much as we like to cover certain things or we have ideas on what might be interesting to take a look at, if we know it's interesting to you guys, then we'd like to cover that as well.
Yeah, we're at banthingshappen@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And no one ever emails us there, just a lot of spam. And,
yeah, we've gotten some spam.
Yeah, lots of notices from blog contents, like this recent one from the 4th of October that reads, "Fantastic submit, very informative. I wonder why the opposite specialists of this sector do not understand this. You should proceed your writing. I am sure you have a great reader's base already."
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Thank you so much.
When things make sense like that, I mean, it just hits you right here in the heart.
I can't read your name because it looks like it's in a foreign language. The email came from Michelle Hausman at yahoo.com. So thank you, Michelle or Mikkel Hausman.
And Michelle, if you're out there, you've probably been hacked. You might want to look into that.
Yeah, maybe. All right.
Your email is compromised.
I have been.
I'm sorry, we shouldn't laugh at that because
we shouldn't.
It's
not.
Fun.
If your email has been compromised, do something about it.
Yeah.
Always make sure, guys. This is my public service message. If you lock down one account properly, make sure it's your email. Yeah. Do not have an email account with a password.
Or make sure it's your Pornhub account.
That's important too.
Yeah.
If someone can get access to your email, that is the easiest way that they can get access to anything else. Because anything else, you can just go in and say I forgot my password. Send a link to reset my password to my email.
All your multi-factor authentication is going to run through your email.
Fucked. So especially Michelle or Mikkel Hausman out there. Yeah. Lock down your email, please.
Yes.
We love you. I've been Todd Sullivan,
I've been Peter Avon.
and until next time.
Go read a fucking book.